Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org. I'm Charles Epting from HR Harmer in New York City.
And I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Now, Michael.
Yes.
Who's our guest going to be today?
So today we're talking to Mark Rosenberg, CEO and founder of HipStamp. So we're going to be talking to him about kind of the idea behind HipStamp initially, what they're kind of working on now, and what they're looking forward to in the future.
And I would say the three go-to places for stamps online, unless you're looking for something specialized.
Yeah.
You go to Delcamp, we talked to Sebastian.
Yep.
You go to HipStamp, we're talking to Mark. You go to eBay, and I hope we can have someone from eBay on at some point too. But these are the three major players. This is like the trifecta of online stamp sales. They all do things a little bit differently. They've all got their strengths, and they've all got their specific focuses. And I'm curious, again, we've already spoken to Sebastian, had a great conversation with him.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to hearing a different perspective on how to handle the philatelic e-commerce thing. Because again, it's becoming more and more part of the hobby. And these companies like HipStamp that got in at the ground level are becoming major players. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So why don't we bring him in then?
Let's bring him in.
All right, here we go. Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Great to be here.
So to kick things off, can you we usually just start. Can you give us your own personal journey? What got you to where we are today, and then we'll kick off talking about HipStamp a bit more in detail. But what's your own personal path that got you into this industry?
Sure. So I've been involved in collectibles and e-commerce for about 25 years now. Back in 1996, when eBay first came out, my father is an accountant, but he's always been a part-time stamp dealer. Mm-hmm. So I convinced him to start a business with me, buying and selling stamps on eBay. So we were doing that for quite a while. We were pretty successful. And then during that time, I wound up graduating with a degree in computer science. So shortly after that, I wanted to start a small marketplace as a hobby. So I started a website that was called Stamp Once, and originally morphed into Bitstark.com, which I wound up selling in 2012 to Stanley Gibbons. So went to work for Stanley Gibbons for a few years, left there in 2015. And about a year after that, I had the idea for HipEcommerce, which is my current company, which includes HipStamp. So my whole idea for HipEcommerce is that if you think about collectibles as a whole, such a huge market, hundreds of billions of dollars bought and sold of collectibles each year, but each collectible is quite different from the next. So I felt that at the end of the day, if you tried to create a marketplace for all collectibles, you weren't able to create anything special for anyone. So my whole intention was to then build specific marketplaces that would be completely dedicated just to a specific type of collectibles. So that's why we have HipStamp specifically for stamps, HipComic for comic books, and then HipPostcard for postcards. So started that in 2016. Continued to just grow the company from there. Really focused on delivering specific features that really made sense to those collectors and buyers. Great example on HipStamp is that everything on our site has been built to really deliver exceptional experiences around search. So we understand how stamp collectors search. We understand they're looking for country and catalog numbers primarily. So everything about our search engine is just built to automatically understand that. A great example of that is if you go to eBay, for example, and you're in the stamps category and you search for United States #1, most of the results are just inaccurate because they're just doing a keyword search. Whereas on HipStamp, if you search for United States #1, the results are extremely accurate because we're not doing a keyword search. We actually understand that you've searched for a specific country, whether you've typed in United States, USA, U.S. We know what you're looking for, and we understand also you're looking for a specific catalog number, so we match that specifically with our catalog number field. So that was basically the premise for HipStamp, is just to make everything just work. It's basically magical. You shouldn't have to do anything extra for you to be able to find the things that you're looking for. So that's where we started 2016, continued to grow the company from there. By the end of 2018, I knew that we wanted to be able to grow much faster than we were, so we went out to do a fundraise. We raised about $500,000 in 2018. 2019, we raised an additional $1 million, and then last year in October, we raised $5.5 million to continue to grow our team, build the company, and just continue growing from there.
And was that specifically for the fundraiser? Is that for all of HipEcommerce, or is that just for HipStamp?
It's for all of HipEcommerce. So
Okay.
basically, the way that we're organized is we focus on being able to build on the technology side. We have a core underlying platform that goes across all the 3 different sites, and then we focus on building out custom features for each of those sites. And then holistically, we obviously have a customer support team, product team, marketing team that are looking across all the different sites that we want. Today, most of our business is on the HipStamp side, and that's where a key focus for us is. So I'd say most of our focus today is on HipStamp, and then also HipComic is something that we've been putting more efforts to as well, particularly on the technology side there.
Yeah. I want to dive more into that in a second, but I just kind of have a general question. Do you have any plans to open up like a Hip Coin or Hip Card, the other collectibles as well?
Right. So yeah, that's an excellent question. So right now we're really focused on the 3 platforms that we have today, and just continuing to go deeper into those areas. There's a huge amount to grow. But that being said, certainly our longer term plan is to get into additional markets and additional verticals. So coins, sports cards are certainly things that are on our radar. And most likely we'd be looking at that sometime next year as far as getting into additional sites and such.
Recent. That's soon. Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of e-commerce platforms, whether it's eBay, Amazon, whatever, they're sort of a one-size-fits-all solution, which is great. You can find anything there. But when you're dealing with a specific mindset, you talk about searching for catalog number. Comic book collectors, which I don't collect comic books myself, but I know that it's a completely different. There are things that are analogous, but every hobby is going to be different. Coins and comic books and stamps. So, what sort of market research do you do? What sort of how do you get inside the mind of collectors to figure out what features to apply to HipStamp versus what features to apply only to HipComic?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely an excellent question. So we kind of look at that as 2 sides. So internally, on the product development side, we look at things that are just kind of obvious, but also might be smaller things that just make sense. So a great example, as you mentioned, we have the 3 different sites. You think about a stamp compared to postcards. So most stamps are portrait, most postcards landscape. So if you go to HipStamp and you search, you're going to see that we have 4 items across. They're all portrait, and the ratio is roughly the size of an average stamp. On Hip Postcard, we have 3 items across, and they're landscape. Again, roughly ratio average postcard. So you can do small things like that when you are focusing on a specific type of collectible and really go that extra mile. So those are some more of the things that are just kind of obvious by understanding the collectibles. But then we do a lot of market research around both our buyers and sellers, and that takes place in a few different forms. So every day we're collecting feedback from our users. We probably receive upwards of anywhere to like 100 inquiries to our customer support team in any given day. So there's a lot of feedback that's coming into us in that way. And then also when we're looking to build out new features, we're talking to select buyers and sellers and making sure that we can focus on the right areas and then really do that research. So one of the features that we launched, I think about 2 years ago on HipStamp, was our want list feature. So we built that from input from buyers coming to us and saying, it's great to be able to, save searches and be able to get updates on items that are being listed that way. But I'd really love to be able to just, give you my want list of 500 items and know when a new item is coming up for sale. So we built our want list feature based on that, took a lot of input into buyers as to how they would use it, made sure we had the right features for there, and focused on developing it that way. We do the same thing for the seller side. We actually just released about, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, our new sell your item experience. So one of the pieces of feedback that we had from sellers was that compared to other marketplaces, our sell your item page was actually rather slow. That's because it was 4 separate pages where you'd have to enter a title, select the category, then go to the next page and put in pricing in the next page. So now actually it's just one single page, and it's about 3 to 4 times faster for sellers to be able to list. So we've been receiving a lot of positive feedback around that as well.
That's fantastic that you're growing so quickly. I mean, it's been a company for so long, but it's just kind of making these adaptations as you kind of get the input. That's fantastic. How large is HipStamp? So about how many dealers and how many items are there?
Right. So on HipStamp today, we have, I think, just under 1,200 active sellers. So those are sellers that have active store subscription with us and active listings with us. And as far as number of listings, that's about 6 million listings in total across those 1,200 sellers.
Wow. Yeah. So I get the promotional emails a lot from HipStamp, and I will say that the promotional emails kind of they're fantastic. I mean, they're very, very tailor made to specific people looking for specific things. So how much work goes into working with dealers to put those items on there, and how far out in advance? Because I see, you announce 99-cent sales, or you announce topical airmail, or you announce, specific sales. So how does that work?
So there's there's a few different ways that we look at that. So essentially, in a given month, we're looking at what we're able to kind of plan out for the month as far as like larger scale events. So one of the ongoing things we've been doing is we have a weekly HipStamp no reserve auction, which I think is in the, I want to say like our 250th week that we've done this in a row now. So that's something obviously we've got on the plan for each week throughout the month. Recently, we just launched our new signature auction event, which we're doing our second one later this month as well. So we try to work on being able to plan those type of events for at least a few weeks, if not a month in advance. And then we're able to work with our sellers as far as being able to get their participation in those events and making sure that we can do all the marketing around that. Then that kind of leads down to, we've built out, a schedule that's typically about 3 months out as far as the different promotions we'll be doing like on our site, again, so that we have time to work with sellers to be able to put in different relevant events to those sales. Then we also have our seller marketing program, where basically we act as essentially a complementary like in-house marketing agency for our sellers. And with that, our team will work with individual sellers to come up with different marketing promotions and campaigns on a regular basis. And we'll be able to help doing everything from setting up sales to helping set up professional looking email newsletters to go out to promote those sales. So we definitely work really closely with our sellers. I say that's one of the biggest things that sets us apart from other marketplaces, is being able to not just work with sellers in that capacity and provide that as a complimentary service, but also again going back to the fact that we're focused on stamps. So we have people who can work with our stamp sellers and understands, like, if we want to do a promotion on Colombians, what does that mean, or all the nuances around that. And one of the really great things about that as well is that we're able to look at all the data points across all the items that sell in our marketplace and across all sellers. So we can also help sellers to figure out what kind of promotions and sales would be effective based on their inventory. So it's a very close relationship that we have with those sellers that are on our platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely phenomenal, because I've heard of the other way around on different marketplaces where sellers will promote themselves, or the marketplace will say this seller is having a sale. But I don't think I've ever experienced outside of HipStamp a marketplace saying we're having a signature sale ourselves and we have these participating dealers with this participating inventory. It's kind of a new idea to the hobby, really, because it's combining different dealers and it's combining different people working together for a common goal to provide customers with kind of a flagship sale for an entire marketplace. That's a phenomenal idea. That was going to be one of my questions later, was what do you feel that HipStamp has been most successful at compared to other marketplaces? But I feel like you've kind of answered that question already.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the way that we work with our sellers and the support that we're able to provide them, along with the fact that we are focusing on stamps. I even just go back to the name. If I call someone and I say, hey, this is Mark from HipStamp, they instantly know that this is a stamp business and that we're focused on stamps. So.
Yeah.
One of the inherent difficulties with e-commerce when dealing with postage stamps is going to be, both, on the one hand, you have people with ill intent trying to sell things. And on the other hand, you have people who maybe don't have all the knowledge to know how to watermark a stamp or how to, check the perfs on a stamp. So, you have different places trying to solve this problem different ways. I've been fascinated with StockX lately, where they send the item to a sort of third-party middleman. Yeah, they started with sneakers, I think, and now they're expanding to Lego sets and cards and everything.
Right.
So, how much do you think about this? Again, there's always going to be an inherent risk when buying something online versus going to a stamp dealer and holding it in your hand. So, again, how much do you think about this, and what are some things that you've done to try and mitigate that that concern?
Right. No, that's an excellent question. So there's a few things that we do about this. One of the things is, as I mentioned, we have about 1,200 sellers on HipStamp, and each of those sellers have an active store subscription with us. So on some other marketplaces, you can list items if you have a store subscription, or you can list items if you don't have a store subscription. And typically, when you don't have a store subscription, you're not paying a monthly fee, and you might just create one auction listing or one store listing. Maybe it's slightly higher fees, but there's basically no barrier to entry in that scenario. So for us, we've actually tried out having no store subscriptions, and we decided against that because basically what we saw happen in that case is that if you're not committing to having a store, again, our entry store starts with an annual subscription, $3.95 per month. So it's a very low barrier to entry, but just having some barrier to entry for us, it really helps to help us to keep up that quality. Because what we saw when we did try having no store subscriptions as an option, I think as you mentioned, someone who finds a random Ben Franklin stamp and thinks it's worth $1 million and just lists it on the platform. So that was actually the type of activity that we were seeing when we didn't have any store subscription. So that is one barrier to entry that helps us to keep up the quality in general. We also have a trust and safety team that's always monitoring our listings, and also very much we rely on our community to alert us if there are any issues, and we quickly take action on both listings and accounts that there seem to be any issues with. And then as far as the payment on our platform, all the payment goes through PayPal. So it also offers additional protection to any buyers up to $2,500 per order as well. I think on the kind of the authentication piece, for the most part, what we see is that when people are starting to purchase items that are over, $300, $400, $500, most of the sellers they're purchasing these are either reputable sellers, or they'll be looking for items that come with certificates of authenticity already. So for the most part, we have a very, very low issue with any problems on our site as far as authenticity or problem sellers or anything of that nature.
So do you work with sellers and buyers if there's kind of a disagreement?
Yes.
To try and resolve it kind of on the community itself, or
Yes, exactly. So we always try to work with both our buyers and sellers to resolve any issues. At the end of the day, payment's always going directly between the buyer and seller. So if there is an issue with the particular seller, we'll encourage buyers to file appropriate claim with PayPal. But at the end of the day, we'll also try to make sure that we can make things right. And if there are any issues, we'll also additionally help to resolve it in ways that we can as well. There's a few different ways that we go about doing that. At the end of the day, for us, it's always important to make sure that every buyer that purchases from us, even if there is something that goes wrong, that they're still having a pleasant experience and that we're able to provide them the support in that way.
Mm-hmm. So I'm impressed by the what you talked about earlier, where you type something into the search bar, you type in US number 1, and it pulls up just US number 1. It doesn't pull up US number 100, US number 101, because it's not just a general search. So is there any way to kind of police people from misidentifying stamps? I know, thinking too far in the future, we probably don't have the technology yet. There's no image scrub that just makes sure that the stamp is at least cataloged correctly, given type or whatnot. But is there a way to police people from either misidentifying material by accident or on purpose?
Right. So there's a few things around that. Again, we really rely on our community. Yeah. We have over 100,000 members on HipStamp. So if there's a problem listing, usually someone's quick to report it to our team, and we take quick action on that. One of the other things that we do, which also helps our team to be able to police things better as well, is we have something which we call our HIP values, and we actually have a subscription where you can have HIP values available to you on HipStamp. And what that does is it'll take any specific country, catalog number, and condition, and we'll look at all of the sales history that we had to come up with a value. So similar to a catalog value, but based on real sales that we've had recently. Yeah. And with that, our team can easily see someone's listed, a US number 230 used, and they've listed it for $5,000, and then we can see that HIP value is just a couple of dollars. That clearly that there's an issue there. So it helps more junior members of our team more easily spot issues, which they can then escalate internally. So that's one way that we do that today. As far as being able to help identify items correctly, we do actually want to be able to do that automatically in the future. We've actually been spending a lot of time on the comic book side, because it's a little bit more direct there. So on Hip Comic, we have a feature we call our Hip Comic scanning feature, where if you take a picture of a comic book, we'll instantly fill in the volume, the issue number, the main character, the genre, the publisher, so all the details you need to create a listing. So that's really focused today on just helping sellers to create listings faster, so they're able to create listings about 4 to 5 times faster on HipComic than they would be on other marketplaces and elsewhere. So it's a little bit more nuanced on the stamp side, because usually a comic will look like one way or another, obviously, with stamps, whether it be perfs or watermarks or tiny defects for EFOs. It's a lot more nuanced, but we do see a way that we'd be able to at least get to a point in the future where you'd be able to take a picture of a stamp, and we can at least suggest to you a few options that this might be, which can also help us on the side of making sure that data is accurate. So that's something that we do have on our roadmap. We don't have a clear time frame on that. It's likely not going to be something that we're working on this year or next year, but it is something that we plan to address in the future as well. And then particularly for international stamps, we think that'll be really helpful to help people identify that as well.
Yeah. So what you just mentioned, the price realization, what was the name you
we call it hip value.
Hip value. Okay. Is that just on the back end that you see, or is that a tool that's kind of available to sellers and buyers so they can kind of help people price their own material, or it kind of tells buyers this is what this item is trending at? And then an even larger question is, do you track that year over year to kind of track trending prices of stamps?
Right, exactly. So the way that we have it set up today is it's a subscription. So as a seller, it's either a subscription you can add on to your store subscription, or if you're on our premium store subscription, you receive that complimentary. And as a buyer, you're also able to take advantage of it. And we have a few different levels based on if you want it for just the US, if you want it for international, and we have some advanced features as well. And that's anywhere, I believe, from between $5 and $25 per month. And basically the way that works is if you have a Hip Value subscription, let's say you're visiting one of our HipStamp no reserve auctions that's ending on next Thursday, you'll see all of the items and what the bids are, but directly below that you'll see what the average value is based on our past sales for that country catalog number and condition. And one of the things I think that sets us apart with this feature is that you're able to not just see what that value is and how many items we've based that price off of, but you can actually click through to that and then actually review all of the individual items that we use to calculate that price, so you can further look at centering and things like that to get a better idea of current items that you're looking to purchase as well.
Interesting. And how long has that? I assume the data goes back infinitely, but how long as long as HipStamp has been around? But how long has that been a feature of HipStamp?
So we've actually had this feature for a few years now. We launched it, I want to say, about 4 years ago. To be honest, we definitely could be promoting this feature a lot more than we do
I'd
today.
never heard of that before.
Yes. But yeah, so it's something we've had 4 years. But yeah, it goes back and gets all of our historical data. So we have over 10 million price points on items sold. Again, basic. And not just, it's the country, catalog number, condition, and also format. So if it's a single versus a pair or a block or a plate block, we can get that granular as well.
Wow, that's a phenomenal tool.
Thank you.
Something I wonder is you're an e-commerce platform, you're online, you're very digital, you're very forward thinking in that regard. Yet there's obviously a lot of print advertising presence. It shows. How do you connect to the online sphere with the fact that this hobby is rooted in face-to-face interaction, and it's a very tangible hobby, right. And as much as it shifts online, we were always at the end of the day collecting little bits of paper. So how do you sort of marry that the digital with the physical?
Right. So I think there's a few different ways that we look at this. So one, we're always looking at how we can bring some more of these, the physical way that people collect stamps online. So a great example is our My Want List feature that I mentioned earlier. So that's another way that, people are normally doing this, offline, sending people faxes and whatnot, bringing it to shows. So helping to make that a way that we can do things digital. But it also just goes back to, again, being able to connect with both buyers and sellers on a level that you just don't experience at other marketplaces. So I mentioned how we do this with sellers, in particular our seller marketing program, but this is something we do with buyers as well. Particularly, any buyer who's interested in any items that's priced a little bit higher, even $100 and over. We're also happy to have a high touch point with those buyers. We have relationships with them. So we have what we call our concierge sales program that's led by Anna on our team, and each month she's probably helping anywhere near 100, 150 or so buyers to acquire items that are on our platform, helping to find the right item for them based on what they're looking for, and taking that more high touch approach, helping to negotiate prices with sellers as well. So we definitely take a look at what makes sense to be able to, even if it's not physically in person, just what makes sense as to the way that stamp collectors collect, what's important to them, having those personal connections. And then As far as print advertising, we do print advertising. With the pandemic ending now, there's more opportunities for us to be at shows. So we'll have a team that's going to be at the Great American Stamp Show next month, and just looking for more opportunities along that as well.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a definitely forward thinking. I mean, curating collections for the buyers on your platform almost is something, again, I really haven't heard of outside of auction houses themselves working with customers to build their collections. So it's not something I think an online marketplace has ventured into before.
Right.
Yeah. So where do you see, if I can ask, HipStamp in separating it from Hip e-commerce? Where do you see specifically HipStamp in 5 to 10 years? Right. What is your and is the mission statement for HipStamp the same as when it was created as it is now?
Yes. So as far as where we see ourselves, in 5 years, we actually, as a company, we just set objectives and key results for this quarter, but we also set them for the next 5 years. So I can
really?
speak to this fairly. Yeah. So on the both the HipStamp side specifically, within 5 years, we want to be able to be larger than eBay, specifically for stamps. So eBay roughly does about $350 million a year in sales of stamps per year. And today we're doing just under probably about $25 million per year. So we're looking to be able to be larger than eBay within 5 years to get past that $350 million. And a large way that we focus on this is we don't really look at eBay as a competitor, particularly like when we work with a seller, we don't try to convince sellers not to sell on eBay. If you're selling on eBay, continue selling on eBay. You're going to do the same revenue that you do there, but also sell with us. And normally what we see is I'd say within 12 months, sellers that are working with us and we're helping them with marketing, they're going to be doing more than they're doing on eBay, but it doesn't impact their eBay sales. I think it's because there's just, there's enough to go around within the stamp community to just continue growing your businesses. And that's what we're really focused on. So specifically looking at that, we think of being able to bring more of these offline sales online. And that's why we're not necessarily looking to steal market share from eBay. But again, as you mentioned, there aren't marketplaces that are working directly with buyers to figure out what are they looking for, curating lists for them and doing the same thing on sellers and helping them to sell more. So we look at it as then, 5 years, we expect that we'll be able to do more than $350 million a year in stamps, but eBay will probably be doing about the same. But it'll be that we've helped buyers and sellers to enjoy their hobby more, make more connections, and be able to find more items online in particular that they might have only been able to find offline previously.
So the main goal for HipStamp is kind of a large, the similar kind of thing, like a large community of an online marketplace that helps collectors and sellers sell easier and buy easier. I do really like the pricing tool.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what our mission has been from day one, is to build in these individual marketplaces, particularly on the stamp side, that have these features that are really exceptional for buyers and sellers to help them grow their hobby. So again, we're not looking to just compete with other players, eBay included. We're looking to actually expand what people are able to do, particularly online, by enabling them to have these features that just don't exist anywhere else.
How large is the HipStamp team? The people working on the website, programming it, and the customer service and everything.
Right. So as a whole company, Hip e-commerce, the majority of our focus is on HipStamp today. That's the majority of our businesses. So we've actually grown the team quite significantly. I think at last count, we had 52 employees across the company. Wow. And again, largest focus as far as our GMV and revenue is on the HipStamp side today.
Do you ever hire professional philatelists on your team to kind of help give ideas behind the marketplace, or even per diem to just
Right. So actually, our in-house philatelist is actually my wife, Amy, who's been working with us for a few years. So she's actually been in the stamp industry for herself about 12 years as well. So she has a good knowledge of that, and she's actually on our HipStamp team. And then she helps the team there to be able to have that stamp knowledge, whether it be on our marketing side or on helping sellers and all those different pieces. So she's been a key resource to kind of bring that stamp knowledge to the rest of our team, particularly new team members.
Are there any items that have been sold through HipStamp that you are most proud of, or anything that stands out, in the 5 or so years of the company's history that's sort of a like a key moment in your eyes?
Right. So we've sold quite a few expensive items. Off the top of my head, I think we've sold items for 10, 20, 30, $40,000. For me, some of the exciting ones are just stamps that I personally like. So we've sold a couple of CIA inverts, including at auction, which has just been exciting for me to see. So those are some of the key items that we've sold. But in any given day, we're selling multiple items that are in the thousands of dollars or more. But I think for me, the most exciting thing is when we're able to work with sellers. We've had many cases where sellers were selling online elsewhere on other platforms, and for example tried our no reserve auctions, and then at the end of the day they said, hey, actually I'm getting significantly higher prices realized with you, and then being able to participate in our auction events on weekly basis. So for me, that's really exciting, is when we work with a seller, they're really happy with the results that they have, and then we build that lifelong partnership with them and are able to continue working with them.
So HipStamp yourself doesn't sell any items. So what would happen hypothetically if someone came to HipStamp and said, I have a collection? What do you do with that information? Do you sell it to the dealers on HipStamp, or where does that information go?
Yes, excellent. That's an excellent question. So we actually do a small amount of our own buying and selling out of our total GMV. Okay. It's maybe around 5%. The focus there has been we've built out a team that's able to essentially take collections and then break those down into individual items and auction them off. So originally we had started this out when we first started our weekly no reserve auction events. We wanted to be able to put some items in there, and before we were able to convince sellers of our platform and the prices realized, we did a small amount of that ourselves. But we quickly realized that we were able to use a couple of different tools when we were looking at a collection. So everything from expertise, but then also using our hip values as well to come up with an idea of what this would sell for at auction, and then bid accordingly. And then we felt that helps to add some liquidity to the market as well. So we do acquire some collections, and then we break them down into individual items, and then we'll sell those ourselves. That's through we have a specific store called Rosenberg Philatelics, which is our store of buying and selling. But the other piece of that as well is that we do consignments. So in particular, if someone comes to us and they're interested in selling items, but they don't want to start a store themselves, we can also take their items on consignment, and then we'll scan, list, and ship them for the seller as well. So that's one option that we have. In some cases where things are either more specialized or just wouldn't be the right fit for us, we'll also then reach out to our sellers to see if they would have interest in material that buyers might be bringing to us as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I guess my last question would be, how have you seen HipStamp grow over the past year during the pandemic? How has the marketplace been? Have you seen more dealers? What's the overall community been like on HipStamp this past year?
Right. So I would say, when the pandemic first started last March, we were quite nervous as to how that would impact us. Mm-hmm. But even by April, we realized that with stamp conventions being closed and there not being a stamp auction event to go to each week, we started to see a pretty big influx. So I'd say even just March to April, we saw roughly a 15% increase just month over month. And that basically continued, I would say, throughout the pandemic, and we continued to grow from there. And yeah, for us, it's been really exciting to be able to, work with more sellers, provide them with more options to how they can sell. We heard from many sellers that they were used to being able to go to auctions and travel to different stamp shows every weekend, whether it be because it was obviously financially helpful to be able to sell items, or it was just because they love that community and being able to get out there, being able to come to HipStamp made a big difference for them. So we received a lot of really just great feedback from both buyers and sellers through this time, and it's definitely helped us to continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. So that 15% is an increase in number of items listed or sale value of items?
That would probably just be sale value of items that we saw just in that
Wow.
that March to April just of last year alone. And then from there, each month we've continued to grow as well.
Okay. Yeah, it would be really interesting to take a look at the hip values for those items over the past year. I feel like everybody has said prices for everything has just skyrocketed. So
yes.
The fact that you guys are actually tracking this, it would be, for condition as well, I think is very different than most places. Would be interesting to take a look at.
Yes.
Yeah.
My last question for you is: do you ever go on HipStamp? What do you buy? What are you looking for? What catches your eye? Maybe when you're just browsing, is there anything that you ever can't live without?
Right. So myself personally, what I focus on collecting is trial color proofs. I'm just fascinated by trial color proofs. Kind of going back to our earlier conversation on HipStamp, you can go and type in US #1 and all the results that you see are accurate because it's such an iconic stamp that it's so jarring when you're seeing the wrong item. So for me, if you think about, 5-cent brown Ben Franklin stamp, but it could have been lime green or bright blue. So to me, like, it's just this alternate version of history that could have been, and it's just really exciting to me. So I would definitely say if I'm looking at HipStamp myself, it's those trial color proofs that are catching my eye, and particularly if they're any are up for auction, I'm often bidding on them myself for my collection. So.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much again for joining us. No, it's always good to get a peek behind the scenes. Again, you Google something and HipStamp is always right there, one of the top hits. But to go behind the scenes and hear about all the stuff that most people don't get to experience is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a very enjoyable conversation.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll see you at a show soon too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Will you be at Chicago or
So I will not be at Chicago myself, but Kat, our GM of HipStamp, will be there. Amy, my wife, will be there as well. Anna, who I mentioned oversees our concierge, will be there, and a couple other members of our team as well. So
fantastic.
Michael and I will say hello to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Michael, I really enjoyed that. Again, my mind immediately goes to other websites, how I love comparing and contrasting because, again, there's so much business to be had on the internet these days. We love shows. We're going to shows coming up. I still love going to a dealer at a show more than anything. That's how I buy most of my stuff. But the reality is, I mean, there's business to be had. There's business being left out on the table. Yeah. And these different websites are trying different approaches on how to capitalize on that. And I love hearing Mark's take on where HipStamp came from and where it's headed.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's trying to, in one way or another, improve the hobby, whether it be Mark, Sebastian, or the people at eBay. They're all trying to figure out how they can make and improve the hobby by making the marketplace a safer place and a better place to shop and to buy and to sell. And it's absolutely. Everybody's trying they're working together almost to make the entire hobby a safer place. By improving themselves, they're improving the hobby. I don't think there's any direction that any one of them are going in that's making things worse.
I agree. It's how many times have we said on here, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
I love seeing HipStamp succeed, and I just wish them all the best moving forward, and I can't wait to meet some of their team in Chicago. Again, this was a great talk. Really enjoyed it. And what else is there to say? We've got a live stream Fridays, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, talking about that week's news. Maybe we can even incorporate some things we saw on HipStamp that sold in one of our live streams. Dig into some prices realized. But people can find us, philatelypodcast.com, philatelypodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. We're all over the place.
We're everywhere now.
If anybody's made it this far into the episode, they know how to find us. They don't need to hear it again. So this was a fun conversation.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to doing it again real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. See you Friday. We're getting ever closer to Westpacs.
We're almost there. Almost there, man. I'll talk to you Friday, and I'll see you at Westpacs.
Yeah, absolutely. See ya.